Will somebody make this motion?
If the council wants additional speakers, public comments, you must take a motion to suspend the council rules. I'll do that.
Okay.
So we'll do that at the beginning of public comment?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me say up to 6 additional speakers? Or just say additional speakers?
Just make the motion that we will.
Suspend the council rules and add additional speakers. Don't say don't say how many.
No, say 6.
Okay. Okay. 6 additional speakers.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, it's supposed to be 6 speakers pro and 6 speakers con.
Right, we allow
3.
6 right now, 3 for, 3 against, so we're gonna allow 6 for, 6 against, so it would
Oh,
be
you're right.
6 additional.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, we want to allow 3 more for each, so it would be 6 additional speakers.
Where's our computer guys or video guys?
I don't think you need to wait so long.
Okay, right.
Show 701.
All right, let's roll. I'd like to welcome everybody to the St. Charles County Council meeting of August 12, 2019. Tonight for invocation we have Scott Graham, the United Pentecostal International Church, with us tonight. Following Mr. Graham, we will have Mike Elam give the pledge.
Hey!
Father, we give you thanks tonight for the freedom we enjoy in this land. It's a little overwhelming just how good you've been to us. And I give you thanks for it because it was not the gift of a king or the work of man, but it is the unalienable right given to us by our Creator. And for that we give you thanks. I pray, Lord, you would bless those that defend this freedom, both without and within. All of our first responders and military forces, God, I pray you'd be with them, protect and keep them from all evil, be with their families. I ask, Lord, you would bless those that operate in this freedom, every elected and appointed official that serves the public good. I pray your blessings on them. I pray for this council tonight, Lord, in their deliberations. I ask, God, you would give them vision to see what is right, courage to choose what is right, and the wisdom to do what is right. Bless each of us, Lord, as we enjoy this freedom. May we serve this nation best by serving one another in humility and kindness and compassion. I ask these things in the name that I hold higher than every name that's named, the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call, please?
Councilman Cronin?
Here.
Councilman Brazel? Councilman Elam?
Here.
Councilman White?
Here.
Councilman Hannon?
Here.
Councilman Hollander?
Here.
And Councilman Clinton?
Here.
Next on our agenda is conditional use permits, starting with bill number 4747.
Presentation. You just.
Bill number 4747, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 19-02 for a rural recreational activity for a seasonal pumpkin patch to Nick Hargis applicant and Samantha L. Knight, property owner.
Robert, do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Again, this is a conditional use permit request for a land use category called a rural recreational activity on the south side of Highway N, halfway between Wilmer Road and Hefferman Road. And it's basically across the street from a part of Winsville called West Hampton Woods Subdivision. But this particular tract is a little less than 9 acres, rural in nature. And the request, again, is for a rural recreational activity, which would include a pumpkin patch for the purchase of the decoration of pumpkins, corn maze, petting zoo, a ride, and inflatable bouncy house for children. And it's important to know that this proposed use would be between September 1st and October 31st annually. One of the things that county staff reviewed was the potential land use impacts for neighbors. And we did note that there's a house about 60 feet away at the closest point from the children's activity area. And so we had some reservations about whether there would be negative land use impacts caused by this. I would say, though, that it's only going to be for no more than 2 months annually and would end by 6 p.m. Also, after preparing our staff report, the applicant did speak with neighbors and did get a letter indicating full support by the closest neighbor and other neighbors as well, which is helpful. Also, we learned that the inflatable house would be powered by an electric generator rather than a gas generator, which is a lot more quiet. And so the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval unanimously with certain conditions. And those conditions are included within your draft, within the bill that's before you now.
Does the council have any questions for Mr. Meyer? Seeing none, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward. You stand to be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Good evening, council. So I'm applying for a conditional use permit, as you've been told and shown information. Is there, I know you guys have a busy agenda tonight. Is there any questions I can answer for you right off the bat, or any questions or concerns that you have?
I guess, Nick, what time is this? What time do you run to? What's your operation go from?
6 p.m. at the latest is the 6 p.m. is the closing, yes.
Okay.
Wednesdays is from until 6 as well. The only day during the week that we slotted for schools.
Okay. I mean, there hasn't been any, I don't know if there's any neighbors here, but I hadn't had one call or one email, so, I mean.
All the surrounding neighbors' property, I grow pumpkins on the one surrounding property. They're on board, obviously. All the other neighbors surrounding the property, I've had emails from. Those are in the documents as well, from every neighbor around in support of it.
All right. Is there anybody there in the audience that have questions of this applicant? If not,
Could we, I guess Mr. Hargis will be notified on how to waive this process so he can expedite his situation? Okay. You can just call them later. And
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
okay. Thank you. Then we'll proceed on with,
This is a public hearing, I'd like to testify, please. I didn't have any questions, but I'd like to be in support and testify at this public hearing. Here's the card.
He did have a card.
yes, okay.
Sorry. Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of County Council. My name is Arnie C.A.C. Dienoff, County Public Advocate and resident. This family is really thought out, and it's a great and well thought out plan for this conditional use permit. It was a nice presentation, and it's a commitment from this property owner. It's only for a 90-day period. I would ask that the fence be removed. I don't know if Mr. Myers addressed that, but that was a topic at the Planning and Zoning Commission because they were going to construct a berm and landscaping on both the inner and outside, just in case that home ever sells because of the close proximity of it. Our community deserves more family-driven and more family-oriented activities. Their times and their commitment to the community and to the Wentzville area, I think is phenomenal. I would ask that, as Mr. Brazel stated, that you waive the second reading and let this man move on, as the pumpkin season and Halloween will be upon us fairly shortly. And I would ask for your full support and unanimous vote at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to public comments. This is a time when anybody can come before the council on any topic and speak for 3 minutes. And once the topic has been arrived at, then we will allow, we're going to ask for additional speakers tonight. A motion has to be made to do that, but we'll allow for additional speakers because there may be some interest in one of the bills that we are presenting.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we suspend the council rules and allow up to 6 additional speakers.
Second.
And there was a second? And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose? Motion carries. We'll allow 6 additional speakers.
Our first speaker would be Jennifer Rushing.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Rushing. I'm here as a board member of the League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis. I'm here to present a statement on behalf of the Environmental Quality Committee and the St. Charles Unit. The League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis applauds the St. Charles County Planning and Zoning Commission's rejection of the construction plans for the development of the Missouri Bluffs projects. As you know, this forested area is a natural area where dense residential development has never occurred. The land in the early 20th century was owned by hardworking Missouri families until it was purchased and consolidated by the federal government to be used for World War II efforts. After the war, the land was sold to the University of Missouri system as a way of returning the land back to the people of Missouri. The League of Women Voters has been at the forefront of environmental protection movement for decades, consistently supporting legislation to preserve our nation's natural resources and protect our public health. Following the League policy to promote an environment beneficial to life through the protection and wise management of natural resources and the public interest in our land use policy, we strongly oppose the proposed development on this site because it would damage the fragile terrain and decrease the experience of people using both the Katy Trail and the Bush Greenway system. Stormwater management is non-existent, and the grade changes and tree removal for the home sites and roads would force additional stormwater into the valleys, damage trees, cause erosion, and increase downstream flooding. Loss of the conservation area would have a negative impact on the quality of life within the region. The League of Women Voters has a long history of support for parks, conservation areas, and public lands, as outlined in our land use policy. The League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis urges you to reject the construction plans for the development of the Missouri Bluffs project. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
It seems like we've reached a topic, so we'll proceed with more speakers. Is there any speakers opposing this viewpoint?
That was opposed. Brad Goss in support.
In favor? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, my name is Brad Goss. My address is 120 South Central, Suite 700, St. Louis, Missouri 63105. And I appreciate the opportunity to address you briefly tonight.
Mr. Goss, could you speak a little into the microphone?
Will. Thank you. As this council knows, the property in question that the speaker was just speaking about is the Bluff site, which the council rezoned a year ago into a planned development zoning classification. We were required to come back with a preliminary plat and a final development plan, which is what is before this council tonight. The ordinance that approved the rezoning, Ordinance 18063, required us to meet certain criteria, all of which we have met, and the staff found that in their staff report. In particular, we were required to produce certain conservation restrictions for this development, and we have done that. With respect to our approved concept plan that's on the screen before you, we are supposed to present to you a preliminary plat and final plan which conform to that approved concept plan. This is our preliminary plat and final plan. It substantially conforms to the concept plan. Those are the two plans side by side. What you can see the differences there are the multifamily area has been decreased. We'd have 3 multifamily areas. We now only have 1. The number of units has been substantially decreased, and we've also doubled the size of our non-disturbance area by plat, and we've also provided for a substantial area of parkland. So when you compare the preliminary plan and the final plan, What is really the three differences, as I mentioned, we've created a 47-acre park area that we've withdrawn. We've reduced the number of units overall to 220, whereas before it was roughly in the 270s. And we have otherwise held to the setbacks and requirements that were presented to this council. To quickly take you through this, these are the 46 acres in green, dark green, that are reserved for the park. This is the golf course. It has not changed in terms of what's being preserved. Phase 1 is in yellow, Phase 2 in blue, and Phase 3 in pink. Those are the same phases that were provided before in the concept plan. This is the land disturbance area. It's incredibly small in relation to the overall development, less than 8% of the site. To flip it, to show you what's being disturbed, it would be the white areas on this plan. The green areas are remaining undisturbed. Those white areas show not only the roads, but also the proposed home sites. So it is incredibly small with respect to the overall development. The neighborhood character, we are minimizing land disturbance and we are preserving trees. That's the whole idea behind these variance requests, is in order so that we won't have to clear the site and destroy it, but instead preserve it in the public interest. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Richard Orr.
Good evening. My name is Richard Orr. I live in unincorporated St. Charles County in a fairly nice subdivision with large lots that has a lot of covenants and restrictions. And I'm a little concerned about this project. I'm here to speak against the approval of the bill in question, 4748, because I've seen firsthand how covenants and restrictions can be disregarded by the HOA in question. My own subdivision, which I share with several other, about 13 other houses in this rather exclusive subdivision. Some of you may actually know one of my neighbors, Carl Bearden. But we're not allowed to cut down trees, but in fact, it kind of looks like a World War I no man's land, because the restrictions have been universally disregarded. I'm afraid that could happen here. In hiking the connector trail that a lot of these homes are going to come up against, I've met a lot of people, talked to a lot of people about the pending subdivision. I've yet to find a single individual who uses the trail who thinks it's a good idea. They all universally seem not to. I also wanted to mention that I am here in the capacity of being the Public-Private Lands Chairman of the Conservation Federation of Missouri, which is one of the oldest and largest conservation groups in the state of Missouri, composing of hunters and sportsmen primarily. And at their statewide convention in March, they passed a resolution universally condemning this project. And since the Your Own Planning and Zoning Commission has rejected this twice before, as recently as last month, I would like you to keep that in mind when you vote on this project. And I'd like to have all of you get a copy of the Conservation Federation resolution, which I'll leave with over here. Thank you.
Doug Tiemann.
Good evening. My name is Doug Tiemann. I'm an engineer with Pickett, Ray and Silver. Our firm has done the design work involving Missouri Bluffs. As was stated before, we have reduced the density of this development. We now have 160 single-family lots on the tract of land. We have increased the amount of guest parking to 87 spaces. We worked very hard to put those parking spaces in areas where people would not have to walk beyond 3 or 4 lots to get to a parking space. We've distributed those throughout the area, and we've done it to the point where we've actually lost lots to do that. The maximum street slope that we have now is 12%. We have 2 sections of the road there at 12%, and that is to preserve the natural state of the area. We're trying to preserve the trees, reduce the amount of grading, and using a 12% slope achieves that goal. So we are trying very hard to do that. There's two areas where that exceeds the 10% standard to 12%, to a maximum of 12%. All of our streets are 20 feet wide. They have a sidewalk on all but one street, which is a small street, which has a cart path beside that. The cul-de-sacs are 96 feet in the pavement diameter. They've been submitted to the fire district. The fire district has approved our street layout and have seen this most current plan that we have. Our average lot size is now 30,645, and that does not include the right-of-way. Additionally, as we've said before, we've already went to the Corps of Engineers. There are no water courses that will be affected by that. We've actually got a letter from the Corps of Engineers which states that this is a no-impact development. We also have submitted to the county the effects of the slopes, and we show those in a diagram, and we do not exceed 39% on existing land on any slope. Our roadways, as I said, are 20 feet wide. They meet the minimum AASHTO requirements, and they also create a positive traffic calming effect. And that is the goal that we're trying to do, to preserve the natural environment, keep the trees, minimize the grading. As you can see, our roads run down the ridges, and that was done on purpose. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay.
Next speaker, please.
Scott George.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to talk. My name is Scott George. I'm a professional geologist and master naturalist. I've got about 20 years experience in mapping, characterizing, and trying to assess impacts to natural resource communities in environmental impact statements and EAs. And I appreciate the work the applicant has done to try to minimize impacts, but there's still a lot of habitat fragmentation involved in here. And there's only really slivers left of natural habitat in between the homes and the golf course, which will be maintained. One of the values of property, as we all know, is location, location, location. That also applies for ecology. This is bordering the 17,000-acre Weldon Bush Howe Conservation Core area as designated in the St. Louis Regional Biodiversity Atlas. Anything infringing on those core areas will have impacts. These large continuous areas are very vital to biodiversity and ensuring the environmental integrity of these areas. Just looking at the ecological resources involved on the Bush Greenway, there's been 135 birds identified. 40 of these birds are listed as species of conservation concern or priority birds, including rare neotropical migratory songbirds. It's supposedly one of only 2 breeding sites for the cerulean warbler. There are other rare species likely at the site based on an MDC heritage database search are the ring salamander, gray bat, Indiana bat, northern long-eared bat, and wood frog. Natural community diversity is high due to the topography and the nearby river. On site is a community of conservation concern, a dry domestic chert forest. And these developments will impact our greater areas outside of just the roads and the homes. Invasive impacts from roads and invasive trees and tree mortality can extend 300 feet from the roads. Disturbance to impacts to wildlife can extend several hundred feet, and the roads and the homes create barriers to animal movement and affect populations. I would think that an environmental assessment is needed to determine the impact on the listed federal and state listed species in this area, and that would be the next step in my process. I think I recommend you vote against this project due to the environmental impacts. Thank you.
Chuck Keverly.
Mr. Chairman, we did not know that there would be 6 speakers allowed for and against. Had we known that, I would have submitted some additional names to speak. I do have 2 additional gentlemen here who I'd like to be able to speak who have filled out speaker cards, but we simply weren't made aware. The rules usually are 3 can speak in favor, 3 can speak against. If we're allowed for those 2 gentlemen to speak, I would like Mr. Rensing to speak, then Mr. Bussey, and then Mr. Caverly, if the chair will allow us.
What's the council's preference?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brian Rensing.
Hi, my name is Brian Rinsing. I'm a traffic engineer with CBB Transportation Engineers and Planners. In 2018, we did a traffic impact study for the proposed residential development in Missouri Bluffs. In summary, that traffic impact study indicated that there was no off-site road improvements necessary to accommodate the additional traffic from the development. As part of that, we also looked at the internal road system and determined that the proposed road system was adequate as well. Since that time, the site plan has been updated, and there's about a 40% reduction in traffic compared to the previous traffic impact study due to the residential development density being reduced. So since the development traffic will be reduced by 40%, again, there's really no additional impacts to the adjacent roadway systems. The levels of service and impacts will be reduced by 40%. So again, no offset road improvements are necessary. The internal road systems are designed to minimize the impacts to the adjacent nature and trees and preserve that. So the roadway width is less than standard, but will still be able to accommodate the roadway traffic volumes there. In fact, the narrow road width has been proven as a traffic calming measure by industry standards. The internal roadways will accommodate the traffic and help calm traffic. So in summary, the 40% reduction in trips would only help to improve conditions as far as the traffic perspective goes. I can answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Angie Jungbluth.
Good evening. My name is Angie Jungbluth, and I am a resident of St. Charles County. I don't understand why you, the county council, didn't pay attention to planning and zoning's no vote against the Bluff development the first time around. I don't understand why there's continued talk to push forward with the Bluff development when planning and zoning has voted against this development for a second time. I don't understand why you, the county council, will not listen to the public outcry against the Bluff development. I have sat through 8 long meetings, both county council and P&Z, and the only people that have spoken in favor of the development are the ones that stand to make a profit. I don't understand why the county council does not see the other options for this property. University of Missouri President Choi is open to keeping this area natural if they can get out of the binding contract with Whitaker. I don't understand what St. Charles County has to gain from building this subdivision. With all due respect, I am asking that you make a choice that planning and zoning will understand. With all due respect, I am asking that you make a choice that the citizens of not only St. Charles County, but the surrounding counties as well, will understand. I will leave you with a quote that I wish you would truly take to heart and ponder. In the end, our society will be defined not only by what we create, but what we refuse to destroy. Thank you.
Timothy Busey.
Good evening. I'm speaking in favor of the development. I have been involved with development and home building in the St. Charles County almost exclusively for the last 25 years. And I just want to say that there's never been a development, to my knowledge, in the county of St. Charles that has gone to such lengths to preserve the character of the site and also to respond to voiced concerns from the public. We have gone through a number of iterations, and as named community architect for the Bluffs project, I am proud of the way that this project has come about. I was originally the architect for the Missouri Bluffs Clubhouse 25 years ago when the golf course was being built originally, and I don't remember this kind of uproar over building a golf course, which also destroys things, and it's a public good to have a golf course. At any rate, this project has been continually refined and will have no visual impacts on the Katy Trail or Highway 40 corridors, even though there's a misinformation campaign out there that discusses that. And just finally, I'd just like to say that there are 250 people on the waiting list who have expressed serious interest in this project. So that's more than the number of lots we even have. We haven't started, we haven't advertised, we haven't done anything. So there is a demand, there is interest, there is support for this project. So thank you very much.
Arnie Dienoff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. As I said at Planning and Zoning Commission meeting a few weeks ago, back in July, I pray and hope that this is not a dog and pony show and not a political stunt by this council with its political relationship and funding by Mr. Whitaker and the Whitaker family. This land was sold over and over between different jurisdictions for $1. This land remains to be in the public domain and owned by us, the people. There are current ongoing negotiations with the University of Missouri Board of Curators. I ask that you buy the land with the over $15 million park reserve fund that we currently have. Let's get it done. The land must remain in the public domain and not for public and corporate windfall. Now, this council made special legislation for the Whitakers and this in particular development. This council about 6 months ago changed the building codes for Mr. Whitaker and his development and the slope grades. You changed the codified code of ordinances from 30% to 50% slope of the roadway. And that's just really wrong because you were treating this developer special than all the other developers and builders in our county, which in my opinion is called discrimination. You've given favorable and preferential treatment, not only with Mr. Klinghammer's representing on the Planning and Zoning Commission, but also on this council. You've even overridden the opposition of the Planning and Zoning Commission on 2 events. In June of 2018, the vote was 8-1. You overrode the vote of the Zoning Commission to rezone this property. Tragedy for 440,000 county residents. In July 2019, the vote was for the preliminary site plan 8-2, and now we're here before you again. I've not heard from the Francis Howell School District about the turning radius. I've not heard from the Cottleville Fire Protection District about the public safety issues and the smallness of the roads, the density of the roadway. I've not heard from the St. Charles County Ambulance District. You've not addressed the water runoff, the release in the creek, the detention-retention problems, the setbacks, the buffer, vegetation of buffers being destroyed, the tree ordinance not being met, the landscape issues, and it comes back to this dog and pony show. Are we here talking to you on deaf ears, or you really have a good heart and you really care about St. Charles County and the people that you represent? These variances are unreasonable, wrong, and intolerable. It's for one potential donor to you, the county council, the Whitakers. I ask that you unanimously vote down this preliminary site plan. Planning and zoning voted it down. I ask that you follow their recommendation. This is seen like preferential treatment and the heck with the residents. And I ask that you vote this measure down at the next county council meeting, the last Monday in August. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chuck Caverly.
Perfect. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board. It's nice to be back in front of you again. My name is Chuck Caverly. I work with Native Landscapes Solutions. I'm a botanist. Our company is an ecological restoration company, and we've been asked to assist Whitaker, as you well know, in putting forth the conservation piece of this development. Of this 300 acres, as you well know, the invasive species piece on the existing properties on all the corridors in St. Charles County, Highway 94, 64, whether it's Bradford pear, Calorie pear, honeysuckle, or Serratia lespedeza, the impact on the economics throughout the county is going to be felt for a long time. Part and parcel of this job, this concept, is to take these 360 acres and make them a reserve for no invasive species. So when we talk about all the adjoining properties, how are they being managed? This property will have ongoing stewardship that will provide ongoing control and maintenance to remove any invasive species which raise their ugly heads. The other part of this project that we will be looking at is stormwater management. The cutting edge and best practices in stormwater management includes use of native species to ensure long-term and deep core percolation into the geology, and they do that by their native roots growing 8 to 15 feet in the ground. There are restrictions of the landscaping by regulating grading, dredging, excavation, and tree removal. As you saw when Mr. Goss had the map up that was all white are the areas that are disturbed. The green areas will remain. We're talking about introducing potentially 50 new species of native forbs and trees into an existing tree forest environment. So we're adding more opportunities for more species to take off and do their job. All streetlights that have been mentioned are dark skies, so they're all low and don't have the impact on night flying birds. In addition, there'll be educational programs that will be available through the program or through the clubhouse. This is an example of the level spreader, which is the mechanism for the stormwater control. Native plantings, I'm sure you're familiar with, but the big piece is the invasive species control. This isn't just for the new development, but that also includes the golf course. I don't know the last time you played the golf course, but in a lot of the common ground or on the roughs on that golf course is the bush honeysuckle and Serratia lespedeza. When you drive into the country club, you pass calorie pears all along the 94 and 64 corridor throughout St. Charles County. The invasive species is a big piece of this program. And lastly, but not least, are the pollinators. The opportunity to provide meaningful habitat for insects to continue to grow and as a way station for the monarch and the other migrating species. This will again act as a key. So I'm speaking in support, and I would appreciate yours for this project. Thank you.
Chris Caldwell.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak. I strongly object to the proposed zoning changes, site plans, and numerous waivers of regulation to allow this residential development. These changes only help benefit the developer and not us, not the people. This area was taken from the people and should be kept with the people. Most people think it's already a park. Public safety is a major concern. With the narrow streets, inadequate street parking, people will ignore the parking. They'll park on the street. Then there'll be an issue, and then the fire department or ambulance will be blocked. It's going to be a public safety issue. I live in a subdivision where my street is 12% grade. With Missouri's unpredictable weather, you can't put out salt and sand all winter long. You have to wait until it's forecasted. Well, with Missouri's unpredictable weather, it often hits unpredictable. We've all seen it in St. Charles County before. With the terrible grade of 15%, people parking on the street, the narrow streets, it will be a disaster for the school buses, for the ambulance, and the fire department. Fire is a danger. Fire is a major danger, in my opinion. With the steep grades, if a brush fire or a wildfire were to start out there with that steep grade, it would be no stopping because of the steep grades. With the houses so close together, they would burn in no time. With the narrow streets, the fire department would have a problem getting the equipment close enough. Please have the strength to deny this site plan and the various waivers of regulations. Our future generations deserve this natural beauty. I grew up in Southern California, and I remember the Santa Monica Mountains being saved from all the developers. The government officials stood up to the developers and said, no, we need this saved for our future generations to enjoy. Now the Santa Monica Mountains Natural Preserve is over 300,000 acres. It's beautiful, and it's the same way it looked 50 years ago. Please do the right thing. Please have the strength and the integrity to do the right thing and not give in to the University of Missouri. Sometimes I get the feeling you guys are afraid of the University of Missouri. In 1970s, we proved that we could fight University of Missouri with the legislature, and I think we could do it again. I urge you to deny this application and consider all the cost and not give in to one developer. Thank you.
Aaron Young, please.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I am Aaron Jungbluth. I have attended 9 meetings on this topic of the Missouri Bluff subdivision and wanted to remind everyone of some of the conversations that have happened over the last 2 years. I am opposed to this subdivision. During a county council meeting, one council member thought that it might be good to help the University of Missouri's finances with this sale. The Riverfront Times has an article that said the transaction is about $3.5 million, which wouldn't even fund Mizzou's football coach's contract. It will not lower the councilman's children's tuition as he had hoped. Planning and Zoning had voted for this, has voted down this subdivision twice. One council member voted this plan down in that first P&Z meeting, but since then, something has changed in his mind. One council member was shocked why there was such an emotional opposition to this. The public's emotion stems from the war history, the original residents that were displaced, the conservation area of this area, and the green spaces that could be destroyed. The councilman actually got emotional, ironically, because of others' emotions. The developers have created very interesting conservation ideas for a subdivision. Enact these ideas in the next proverbial subdivision plan in flat farm fields somewhere in the middle of St. Charles County, not on the bluffs of the Missouri River. One council member had the courage to say, this is a great subdivision, but not on this property. What is the advantage for St. Charles County to develop this area? The only topic I've heard is the tax generation for Francis Howell School District and maybe some of the county amenities. With less and less homes every time the developer comes back to this council, it seems like there's no longer a purpose for this, that the taxes are going to be so low. Hundreds of people have attended these meetings and written letters in opposition over this subdivision over the last 2 years. 2 council members have told us separately that there is a win-win announcement coming soon. They can't comment on the details at this time. My hunch is that they believe that this development is still moving forward and the county is going to get a golf course out of this university. I don't think that most people that sat in this room for so many times or have written those letters see the win for them. And besides, I don't play golf. In closing, one council member actually referred to me where I live in unincorporated St. Charles County during one of these meetings, telling me so much after the meeting. He said that people like to live by woods, which I do. However, my house was built 30 years ago and we are the third owners. I wasn't even living in Missouri when my house and subdivision was built. I had no control of where or how my subdivision was planned or how it came to be. People want places to go for peace and quiet, to reconnect with nature, and that is why I'm here speaking to preserve this piece of St. Charles County for all county residents. Vote no and send this back to the University of Missouri to come up with another conservation plan. There are plenty of people in the room that will be verifying that they do the right thing after you do the right thing and do it for all St. Charles County residents. Thank you very much.
That's the final speaker.
Okay, final speaker? Very good. Thank you all. Next, we go to oral report by the County Executive Element.
Well, John, you gotta
Mr.
ask
Chairman,
if there's any other speakers.
Captain Hunt has a...
Any other speakers on any
Oh, are there any
topic?
other speakers on any other topic?
That was the final speaker
Final
on any
speaker?
topic.
We had no other cards.
Okay. All right, very good. Proceed. Xavier.
Captain Hunt's going to give you an update on the flood recovery.
Thank you.
Good evening. As I said the last time I was here, this process is a slow process, the recovery. I'm here to update you on the individual assistance and the public assistance that we're hoping to get from the federal government. So, as you're aware, the President of the United States declared St. Charles County a disaster area, and that opened up the door for individual assistance for our residents to get some help. FEMA showed up here and worked with the State Emergency Management Agency and went door to door registering some folks for assistance. We also opened up a disaster recovery center in the family arena. They are still set up there, they're still operating there, and I'll go over the numbers here in a little bit of how many people were registered at the DRC. And also the Small Business Administration was activated to provide assistance to some of the flood victims. To date, we have 485 registrations, and those are people who are asking for individual assistance from FEMA. That does not include those who have already received payment from their insurance companies. So the National Flood Insurance Program has covered a lot of people. So of those 485 folks that registered, 385 of them were online or from the door-to-door registrations that FEMA did, and the other 100 were done at the family arena in the last couple weeks. FEMA has estimated that individuals have sustained at least $1.2 million in damages. That does not include the numbers from the National Flood Insurance Program. I'm still waiting to get those numbers back. They're constantly fluctuating, but it's also in the millions too. So they didn't have a firm number on NFIP numbers. So community development is estimated there's 930 properties and about 1,200 structures that have been affected by this disaster. So they have sent out letters to all the homeowners, and we've started debris removal today. We've also pushed that message out through television media, social media. We did a news release today saying we're going to come out and pick up your debris. And what a lot of folks don't understand is, I know there's been some concerns that it took a long time to go out and pick up this debris. But before we can get any type of relief, the county can get any type of relief, we have to reach a threshold in this county of about $1.28 million worth of damage before we could even risk spending the funds to go out and clean up this debris. So once I'll get into public assistance here in just a second, but before we made the decision the county isn't required to go out and pick up debris. The county executive decided that this was a good idea because this was such a widespread disaster that we should do that, but we also knew that we were going to have over $1.5 million worth of damage. So it just took a little while to make those decisions and to figure out how much damage we had out there. So all of the debris we've told the public that you have to sort it in different ways, and these are requirements that FEMA has set for us in order for us to be reimbursed for a portion of what we spend. So it's separated in 3 different piles. It has to be placed on the right-of-way. We will not go on private property to obtain or retrieve this construction demolition debris or the vegetation or any of the household debris or major appliances. So it has to be at the curb on the right-of-way for the company to go pick it up. So we went through the competitive bid process. Finance put out the bid. I can let Mr. Schnurr, I don't know if he's here or not tonight, he can talk about that process. But once it was awarded, we're working with a company who started today, is driving 5 trucks around the county, going into West Alton and the unincorporated portions of the county, picking up debris for residents. And they're going to continue that till we believe that we've gotten most of the debris that's been set out. Public assistance, that's a little bit different. That's reimbursement that the county gets or public entities get. We reported to the governor's office, or to FEMA, who reported to the governor's office, that this county alone had $7.6 million in damage to public infrastructure. That's highways and bridges and the airport, any county property. So there's quite a bit of, that does not include state costs. State Highway 94 up in West Alton has received a significant amount of damage. And there was a 9-foot sinkhole. There's 2 cars buried under it right now. MoDOT covered it up. So there's a lot of damage that the state has reported to. So I'm sure it's well over $10 million just for this county alone. So the governor has made the request to FEMA to send to the President of the United States to declare us for public assistance. If in fact they do, which we expect that they will, FEMA will be back to inspect and verify all the damage that has been reported. We report for every entity within St. Charles County, all of the municipalities and public services. We report that to FEMA for them, so we've compiled all of the numbers countywide. As I said, when FEMA comes in, they're going to be asking for detailed records of the debris removal, of repair costs, all the damages you have, and they're going to inspect pictures that we've taken, because a lot of places are under repair right now, like the airport, for example. So pictures will suffice of the damage to verify that we did have the damage, and we'll be able to provide receipts and copies of contracts for the repairs. Once the federal government obligates funding to the state, FEMA holds meetings to explain all of the rules and guidelines that are constantly changing. The federal government's constantly changing and tweaking those. FEMA schedules applicant briefings. I know we've had one in the admin building before, but they will come in and explain the process to all public entities so that we understand what we can and cannot do and what we can expect and what we're required to do. Then the state provides the funding to subrecipients, such as local governments, and then we have 18 months to complete the work. It has to be verified that we completed it. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, that's the Cliff Notes version of it. There's a lot more to it, and I think the guidelines are about 300 pages long that FEMA puts out. So that's the most important stuff that I'm sure that you all are probably interested in. So happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
I just recently traveled along the Missouri River all the way up to Wyoming area, and it's huge flood stage for like Omaha, Iowa, on the Missouri. It's actually washed away part of I-29 up there. Are you worried about what's coming down in Missouri affecting us?
No, I mean, we watch the river levels. Are you talking about debris?
No, I'm talking about its flood. I mean, I-29 all the way through there, it's water just like it was in St. Charles County, like, you know, down on off of 370.
We usually get our alerts from the National Weather Service and the hydrologists. They have not raised any of those concerns with us yet, saying that we're going to go back into major flood stage.
Well, I guess we're fortunate it didn't wash away into the interstate thing.
Yeah, that's true. I do know that $4 million of that $7.6 million that we reported is damage to the levees. North County Consolidated Levee District has reported $4 million in damage to that infrastructure up there. They're hoping to get relief from the Army Corps of Engineers. But they, you know, talking to the chairman of that levee district, he said it could be upwards to $8 or $9 million in damage to those levees. So we don't need another flood. We need to get those, they need to get those levees shored up to prevent water from coming back in. There's still a couple holes out there that put everybody at risk if the water levels do go up, but we're not expecting it. At least I haven't been told we are.
Do we have an idea as to where you think, when you think the water's going to come back to a normal level?
Well, there's, it comes in so fast and going out, it's kind of hard. We've talked to Dardine Levy District and Elm Point Levy District, and when those levees get breached, water goes to different places that we didn't expect it to go.
Right.
There's really no good way to calculate when and how that water, I mean, if you drive down 370, the soccer fields are still underwater.
Right.
And there's really no way for us to gauge when that's going to go back down because it's never happened before to those proportions. So, and that levee blew out there at Elm Point.
Is that water trapped there now? Is that what's the problem?
It seems like it's a fishbowl there, so.
Mississippi, isn't it down?
Mississippi's down below moderate flood stage, so it's in moderate, it's not in major.
But what about the Missouri?
The Missouri.
Same.
Missouri's
Oh,
good.
it is?
Yeah,
Well, I
Missouri's,
tell you what, it don't look good up north.
well, Missouri's good. We floated it this weekend. It's in the bank, so, I mean,
Yeah.
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 Chris, or Joanne, if we get the additional declaration, or can we get any funding for raising some of the roads in South 94 that flood continuously? Can that be part of it? Or do they have to be damaged? I know we talked about it, but
There's a part of the public assistance involves a mitigation plan, so we can come up with but that's a MoDOT question. That's 94, so they're the ones that would have to do that. I don't, but. you
the
can
other
speak to that
question
if
is.
I'm wrong.
Is we're getting calls from the wineries, from, I guess, Donna, you got a call today from Priscilla Nursery. They had a bunch of trees that were wiped out down off of Highway F. And they're told that they only get money for structures. Is that true? I mean, that there's only money available if there's structure damage, if they have.
That is my understanding. It's only, are they asking to replace
Yeah,
vegetation?
can they get some kind of funding or grants or low interest loans?
I'd have
for-
to check on that. I don't know the answer to that. I know typically it's just for structures. Individual assistance is just for structures.
I think if it's part of their business, they can get an SBA loan.
Correct.
Is that what it would be, Steve? Like if
it's part
all
of
the
the
roads are
business, yeah.
closed, so if their businesses were way down, so that would be a,
I thought you were talking about private residents. If it was a business,
no, it's
yes.
all businesses, yeah,
Yeah.
that's.
If it's a
yeah.
business,
Yes.
there's SBA, low-interest SBA loans available.
Yes.
Okay.
If there does become any extra transportation money, myself and Councilman Hammond have talked to a lot of folks that were really inconvenienced when Highway 79 was shut down. There's a lot of people in Lincoln County work in this county, and there's a stretch of Flatwood Road right by Chain of Rocks. It's a county road. It could be elevated. It's not a very long stretch. Dave's looked at it, and so have I. If there's a possibility of elevating that, it would be a tremendous benefit to a lot of folks that work in this county that may happen to live north of here.
I wish I controlled the money and the decisions to do
Well,
that, so.
You got that in your hip pocket tonight, don't you, brother?
Wish I did.
All right, thanks
Have
for
we
your-
looked at, or I assume this is still to come, at some of the roads that we're going to look at doing some work on? I mean, there's been the lady who's been here 3 times now to talk about Greens Bottom Road and what's going on down there.
We have inspected properties down off of Greens Bottom Road. I haven't talked to Craig Chagowski about
Right.
Greens Bottom Road specifically, but
Okay.
I don't think that Greens Bottom Road was damaged or the ground underneath it.
Okay.
But we did send letters to some folks that were affected down there by the floodwaters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody
I
else?
think the problem down there, the Greens Bottom has to do with poor drainage, and I don't know if there's anything that we can do, but I think it's something that I think definitely needs to be looked at.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Hunt. Anything else, Executive Elman?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing that, we move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Seeing that, we move on to bills for final passage, starting with Bill 4746.
Bill number 4746, an ordinance authorizing the county executive or his designee to execute intergovernmental agreements with political subdivisions within St. Charles County to establish property tax reimbursement rates for projects within St. Charles County.
Any questions or comments on bill number 4746? Seeing none, call the title and read the roll.
Bill number 4746, an ordinance authorizing the county executive or his designee to execute intergovernmental agreements with political subdivisions within St. Charles County to establish property tax reimbursement rates for projects within St. Charles County. Councilman Cronin.
Yes.
Councilman Brazel.
Yes.
Councilman Elam.
Yes.
Councilman White.
Yes.
Councilman Hammond.
Yes.
Councilman Hollander.
Yes.
Councilman Klinghammer.
Yes.
Bill 4746 is passed. That concludes bills for final passage, and we move on to bills for introduction, starting with Bill 4748.
Bill number 4748, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance of the County of St. Charles, Missouri, approving the preliminary plat and final development plan for the Missouri Bluffs PUD.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4748? Mr. Cronin?
Well, I wanted to hear for sure, Mr. Goss, I think it was, you said that 38, only 8, according to the stuff that you submitted, only 30 acres of the 400 plus acres there is going to be disturbed. Okay, about 8% of the total, something to that effect. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
The only thing I think the public doesn't know that hasn't come out in these meetings is University of Missouri by law can do what they want with this land if they don't come before this council. So this 400 acres could be another industrial park like Missouri Research Center. I want to make sure they understand this. And the other thing is this particular ground, well, I've walked it and used the Katy and the Bush Greenway and walked up in the woods even. I mean, it's bounded by an interstate highway, a county highway. It's adjacent to a public golf course and a sewer plant and an industrial park. And it's pretty well near an radioactive storage facility. So it's, this is a tough question, but I want you folks to know that the impact that this subdivision would make is not as large an impact as you would see in a traditional St. Charles County subdivision. 8% of the total area. And I think that's an important thing to get. All this stuff, this documentation is in tonight's packets available on the internet if you want to read through it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I've just got a couple of points. I think point number one is that NT Homes and the University of Missouri did not have to bring this before us. To my knowledge, they could have just done it, all right, without coming through the county process. But they chose to go through the process and give everyone a chance to express their opinion. Second of all, the original plan that was introduced a year and a half ago or whenever it was to now is drastically changed. I don't think there's really a whole lot of comparison. The emails that I'm getting and the responses that I'm getting from a lot of people talk about disturbance to the Katy Trail. And the way I have looked at this, and I've looked at this many, many times, I can see 0% disturbance to the Katy Trail. There is no home that is anywhere near the Katy Trail, and most of the ones are located 150 feet above the Katy Trail without vision of the Katy Trail itself. So I just don't see how this development has anything to do whatsoever with the Katy Trail itself. I also, keep hearing people refer to that the people of St. Charles County need to be able to continue to enjoy this land. With the exception of the homes that will be built on the road leading down to the Duckett Creek sewer plant, with the exception of those homes, okay, the only way anyone in St. Charles County has been enjoying the land that we're talking about is with a golf club in your hand, okay? The land that we're talking about, it is not open to the public, all right? These are acres and acres of land that surround the golf course in which there are no trails and there are no county residents being able to, quote, enjoy them because it's next to the golf course. In fact, with this final original, compared to the original one, there's actually 46 acres now that weren't there a year and a half ago that have been set aside for parkland. So it's my belief that there will actually be more people in the county that will be able to enjoy this, quote, land than there would be previous. And then last of all, there's a lot of references to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which I have great respect for. I would say in my 11 years in the county, I've probably voted along the same lines as the Planning and Zoning Commission, probably 95% of the time. But there is a reminder, and that is the Planning and Zoning Commission is just that. They are an advisory board. They are appointed, okay? They give their advice, and according to the county charter, they then give their advice to the county council. And I think there's a real reason that is there for, because the people on the Planning and Zoning Commission do not have to answer to the public, because they're not elected officials, okay? We are, okay? So the final decision rests with us for a reason. And even though, as I said, I got great respect for the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think that, at least my own personal opinion, is this time I disagree with them.
Other comments?
Yeah. Along those lines, a little bit of what Terry was saying is the planning and zoning, the one purpose of them is to have the public hearing and hear what the comments are. So based on what planning and zoning's public hearing was, is we changed a lot of things based on that hearing. We whittled it down to considerably on the housing. The lot sizes got much larger. The buffer zones. If you look on this green, first of all, there's a 100-acre buffer zone along the Katy Trail, which is completely undisturbed. And then you go up on top of the bluff, they took every lot off the bluff. I mean, you got to consider this stuff, that this was a consideration was given on both sides. And also, the fact that folks come up here and say the University of Missouri doesn't have the right to sell the property, that's not our decision. That we had our legal team look at all that stuff and decide what are the legal facts here. And in fact, they didn't pay $1 for it. They paid $7,000 or something for it back in the 40s, which was the going rate. That was what our people told us. So they paid what the going rate was, and it was never designated as public ground. It was designated as a research park. So back to some of the other points made here, we sued University of Missouri years ago because they were building the research park without going through us. And so we lost the lawsuit. So they continued to do that. So this subdivision could have been built with or without us. They didn't have to go through us. They could have just started it. They had, because it's their own state entity. The University of Missouri is its own state thing. So they did not, so if we didn't go through this process, it could have been like the first, they could have just started it. It could have been like the first plan that they had. So based on our legal team, that's the information that was given to us. And also, there's reference always being made that we made concessions on the ordinances for the subdivision. If you understand what the ordinance was made, it was we have grade setbacks when you build a road. So if we left them the way it was, if you got a cliff or you got a rocky hillside and then a road, if you want to stick back to the same ordinances, we'd have to cut it back like that. So what does that mean? That means that we're going to cut all the trees back 60 feet. That's why we made the grade changes. We made it for environmental reasons, so they could be more perpendicular or straighter up and down due to the service of the rock cliffs, just like they have in Augusta Shores and these other communities that were built before we had those type of ordinances. And those are the same thing. They have rock edges, they're straight up and down. That way you don't have to shave into the side of the hill to get your less than 5% slope or whatever it was. But that's why we have that high steep, so we could save the trees along the road. We don't want to cut them down. We don't want to have to shave the ground. So that's the purpose of that. So we're getting people who complain, but we're trying to do things that are environmentally correct, and that's the purpose of that. So if you don't like it, then we'll just throw that out and just cut all the trees back on the roads. But that's not what we want. We want an environmentally friendly subdivision. So those are just some of the comments I wanted to make.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Bill 4749.
Bill number 4749, requested by Michael Horbrook, sponsored by Joe Cronin. An ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A Agricultural District to R1B Single Family Residential District per application RZ 19-07.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4749?
Mr. Chair, I know of no controversy about this. It's in my district. No neighbors have contacted me. It's basically a family cutting up some lots for some additional of housing, and it's also compatible with the housing density in the area in general. So I'm supportive of this and have heard nothing of any controversy to it.
All right. Any other questions or comments? We'll move on to Bill 4750.
Bill number 4750, requested by Michael Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from R1E Single Family Residential District to C2 General Commercial District as per application RZ 19-08.
Any questions or comments on 4750?
I got a
Mr.
comment.
Brazel?
Yes. You all saw the mayor's, actually, the city has, they filed a remonstrance against this. Is that correct, John? On this one? Or Joanne, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm told it is.
So it's going to require a super majority. So I talked to Mr. Zucker, and I told him I would hand you guys this, and you might have got it via email, but I don't know how I feel about this. I think somebody on this council, I can't remember who, might have asked the question, maybe Mr. Corn, I don't remember. This is just a way to pressure them to annex in. I don't know the right answer. I guess we have to decide as a council, is this the proper zoning? If they were to use the uses that are in yellow, is that what we want? So that's the only question. I mean, the only opposition I heard was from the city of Darden Prairie, and that was it.
All right, very good. Mr. Cronin?
Can I ask Mr. Meyer a question on this? Mr. Meyer, along with this zoning, a lot of times in a lot of the cities, when an applicant applies for a zoning change, they also apply for a permit or a conditional use permit or whatnot. Do you have any clue what this applicant plans to do with this property?
No, they've indicated that they would like to market it for commercial purposes. And I did review the county's C2 zoning versus the city's C3 zoning, and honestly, I really could find very little difference between the two. I think what they may be talking about in terms of the remonstrance is the fact that it's at the corner of an interstate and Highway N, so you can imagine that it could be a regional draw at that location, and possibly they're looking for some sort of transformative development at that location that would include multiple lots and some sort of a lot consolidation. Maybe they're wondering if this would allow a single development out in the county that would block some larger, but they did not really elaborate other than they see that C2 zoning in the county would be incompatible with the city's C3 zoning.
They elaborated more to us, okay, and I'll pass this on to you if you want.
Okay.
You can have it, okay?
I've got an extra copy down here, Joe.
No.
Joe, I got an extra copy.
I saw
from here.
remonstrance, but that was it.
Okay, so this is what you need. Does he have a copy of this?
He will have in a moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've listed out several things that are different, and I think our staff needs to look at it and see if that's accurate. And, you know, I understand where Mr. Zucker's coming from on this one. It is 100, it's a tiny little, I won't even call it an island. This is a dot within completely surrounded by the city. And as a former city council member, I understand the desire to have compatible in the same zoning when it's stuck right in the middle of the city. So,
County Executive?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I ask Robert a question?
Yes.
It is in, you say it's right along 70.
Yes.
Is
Or
it-
not, I'm sorry, not 70, but 64.
Excuse me, I-64.
Right.
So it's in the high-tech corridor.
That is what some people call the high-tech corridor, yes.
And
Darden Prairie.
what is our long-range plan?
A long-range plan is for commercial, for that location.
Not high-tech?
It doesn't specify high-tech at that location.
Do we have a specification for high-tech?
In the master plan?
Yeah.
I'll have to review the master plan.
How many acres is it?
This lot is about a quarter acre.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah, it's a house
Okay, so
lot.
it's a small lot.
Yeah, it was a residential subdivision developed in the 50s.
Okay.
And it's one of the last remaining houses left in this subdivision. It's surrounded by commercial.
Okay, so it's a very small lot.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, very good. Mr. Cronin?
This may be a question for you and Mr. Watson, but I mean, in this letter from Mayor Zucker, he's talking about some things that are allowed in county that's not allowed in city. For instance, a automobile car wash, a brew house, a nightclub. Is it possible for us to approve the zoning excluding certain uses like the ones that Mayor Zucker is objecting to? Nope.
No, they're already C2. What's their zoning now, Robert?
The zoning now is residential.
Oh, I see. So, okay.
So could we approve it for the C, but also exclude the specific things that Mayor Zucker is objecting to? Is that a possibility? I don't know if that's can be legally done.
The way I understand it is no.
C1 or C2. They're going to C1 or something, right?
One way, if I could add, one way I look at this is under the current zoning residential, I would think that would be more incompatible with surrounding commercial uses than C2 would be. I mean, if it developed under the existing existing residential, single-family residential zoning, I can imagine that would be more incompatible than what they're proposing, the C2.
I guess I have a problem with letting cities dictate to us that what somebody can do with their property. Obviously, this has been a residence, so they couldn't annex it. And so now, if it was vacant, they could have annexed it into their city, but because there's a house there, they can't. And so I hate to force people's hands into making them annex their house into the city because they want to zone it commercial, which is totally surrounded by commercial. And I just have a problem with Darting Prairie because they don't have anything to offer this individual. They don't have water or sewer. So there's no benefit for this individual to annex into their city. So I guess I'm in support of allowing the rezoning.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Bill 4751.
Bill number 4751, requested by Michael Hurlbert, sponsored by Mike Elam. An ordinance of the County of St. Charles, Missouri, approving a preliminary plat for the re-subdivision of Lot 12 of Valley Acres.
Any questions or comments on 4751? Seeing none, let's move on to Bill 4752.
Bill number 4752, requested by Dr. Mary Case, sponsored by John White. An ordinance authorizing the county executive or his designee to execute contract amendment number 002 for autopsy services with the Missouri Department of Social Services for child death autopsy services.
Questions or comments on Bill 4752? Seeing none, we'll move on to Bill 4753.
Bill number 4753, requested by Samantha Shadrack, sponsored by John White. An ordinance requiring the fingerprinting of applicants in positions within county government for criminal history record information from the Missouri State Highway Patrol and Federal Bureau of Investigation, and creating Section 115.115, Ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, and the Personnel Administration Program.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4753?
Does that include elected officials too, or just employees?
We're employees.
Are we employees?
Yeah.
What does that include? No?
No.
You been misbehaving again?
I don't want anything.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on to Bill 4754.
You got arrested for a red light camera, I know that one.
I just got a ticket for illegal camping in Colorado.
Let's move on to Bill
Captain Huff would like to talk to you
4754,
after the
gentlemen.
meeting.
Bill number 4754, requested by Jeff Smith, sponsored by John White. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an amendment to the East-West Gateway Council of Governmental Financial Assistance Subaward Agreement approved by Ordinance 19-016 for microwave router upgrades at St. Charles County sites.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4754? Seeing none, that concludes bills for introduction. Are there any bills on the table to be taken up?
I do have something I'd like to ask the council's consideration on table bill number 4721 on the kratom restriction bill. I would ask for you to review that, and I would like to bring that up for final passage in the next meeting. So if you have any concerns or changes or anything like that that you'd like to do, please let me know between now and the next meeting. Otherwise, I'd like to go ahead and pull that off the table and vote on it up or down in the next meeting.
Very good, thank you.
Michael?
Sir?
Did you ever get with St. Louis County to see if they're doing anything, or?
So part of the reason why I'm saying let's move on is, as you may have heard, the folks in St. Louis County have had quite a bit going on in county government lately. What are you laughing at? So anyway, they've been rather preoccupied, and the folks at Jeffco have kind of been non-existent on this topic as well. So in talking to some folks, prefer to move on with this and just lead the way. And then if they want to join in with us, they can. We've done a lot of work on this so far. I think we're in a position where we can push forward. And if they want to push forward on their own, I'm going to let them do it on their own.
Mike, is your intent to bring 4718 forward also, or just 21?
I was just talking about 4721.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, gentlemen? Now we'll move on to miscellaneous and announcements. Seeing none?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. Thank you all for coming.
It's free.